So, y'all, I'm on my way to Murphy, North Carolina. And I gotta ride through the fucking mountains. Y'all know how much I love the mountains and shit, right? So I gotta go through these motherfucking mountains. I figured I would come in here and deal with something that I'm seeing black people say in defense of Kamala Harris. It's reminiscent of other arguments that you'll see black people make that are pro white supremacy and the system of institutional racism. Some of you may have saw the live show I did Friday afternoon. If you did not see that, the link's in the description box to my Team Rob live channel. You can go check that out. Where we got into her being black or not black. But now what I'm seeing is a lot of people are saying that Kamala Harris, as a prosecutor, locking up black men for marijuana, putting laws out here to lock up parents of children for truancy, that she, in essence, was just doing her job. And this is a very interesting perspective for black people to have, because one could argue that any member, a working member, or a soldier of white supremacy, institutional racism, is doing, quote unquote, their job. But now, black people, due to us having low self-esteem and us being the talking heads for institutional racism and white supremacy, we will say things about black people, or so-called black people in Kamala's case, or black people full-blown, that they're just doing their jobs. And, you know, this is a very problematic talking point for me, because it makes everything else we're talking about really not mean anything. If we understand how the privatized prison complex works and who are the victims of this system, who are the majority of people in that makes up the prison population right now, that's black folk. One could argue that the cops, 3Ks, are just doing their job. And this is even if they're not full-blown murdering our people, they're arresting our people. We have lawyers and judges that are this whole system that is used to have black people take plea deals and falsely imprison full-blown and give harsh sentencing to black people. Now, on its surface, the system is just doing its job, locking up criminals. That's what people are saying. She essentially, she cleaned up the area in which she was over. She cleaned that area up. Do y'all not find it interesting that whenever somebody can, you know, I guess, use being tough on crime as a talking point or as a campaign slogan even, it's always tough on black people? Whenever they talk about cleaning up an area, it's always black areas that need to be so-called cleaned up. No one has run a campaign based on locking up thousands of caves as a campaign, because the caves don't need to be cleaned up, only black areas. Why isn't that problematic to us? The only areas that need to be cleaned up by locking people up and putting people in prison are our areas. Same thing happened, and it was during the crack era. Areas need to be cleaned up. They need to be tough on crime. Well, that's locking a whole lot of black people up. And now that the so-called opioid crisis is hit, now they're dealing with treatment, and therapy and such. See, what black people do is that we don't understand how institutional racism and so-called white supremacy, we don't understand how that works. So we come out here and be the talking heads and use these same white supremacist talking points. Our areas need to be cleaned up, but not white areas, not the caves. They don't need to be cleaned up. Like, they're not doing no motherfucking crime. And that doesn't make sense for us to use that as an excuse to back Kamala Harris and the things that she's done against black people. How she cleaned up those areas. That doesn't make any sense, and we sound real crazy saying this type of shit, because the only people that ever need to be cleaned up is us. Where you threatening to arrest parents for their children skipping school, but you don't want to talk about the failing of the school system itself. That's a problem. if you don't want to deal with the school system itself. I could imagine a motherfucker might want to skip school because hell, school ain't for me. These poor school systems that we have that due to redlining, nobody want to talk about redlining. And the fact that redlining hasn't been corrected. Nobody wants to talk about that. I remember when I was coming up, a lot of people I knew skipped school to try to help their moms make money to pay bills. You're dealing with poverty then. How the fuck you supposed to focus on goddamn algebra and your stomach growling? Your lights turned off. But nobody wants to deal with poverty. It's just, oh, well, be tough on crime. Be tough on poor people. And black people have made that a logical thing. Now, I'm not sitting here acting like black people don't engage or you know, act in ways that are very problematic, and we're dealing with crime and particularly murdering their own people. But truancy, the things, marijuana, the shit that Kamala was locking people up for, falsely imprisoning people for, that shit is trash. And when you say that you're supporting her and she was just doing her job, you might as well sit your ass down when you're talking about any injustice as far as this so-called justice system is concerned, where our people are concerned. All these innocent black men and women locked up. How can you make sense of that? But the cops just doing their job. The AG just doing their job. The prosecutors just doing their job. The DA just doing their job. The judge is just doing their job. You cannot, in my opinion, be a so-called conscious or a person that knows exactly what's going on and defend Kamala Harris by saying, well, she was just doing her job. Because her job as a member of this system is to oppress black people. By and large. Now, we know the secondary job of this system is to oppress poor people. We understand that. But first and foremost, is to oppress black people, to enforce these laws in black areas, to lock up black men for drugs, but let white men run around selling drugs as much as they want to. That's a problem. The opioid epidemic, a lot of that is stemming from big farm. Ain't nobody talking about cleaning them up, cleaning that bullshit up. The fact that holistic medicine is looked at as goddamn near witchcraft now. That's how it's looked at. The propaganda that is being used against holistic medicines, the murders that have taken place against holistic doctors of all races, nobody's talking about that. Nobody's campaigning against that. Nobody seems to have an issue with that. Because Big Farm lobbies heavy within politics. It's not a problem. But I want black people to be real mindful of what you're supporting and to say somebody's just doing their job. Because your people are the primary targets of everybody doing their so-called job, because everybody's job is to uphold and uplift institutional racism and white supremacy. That's what everybody's job is. To oppress black people. Primary, secondary, oppress poor people. That's everybody's job. So you cannot defend her, whether you want to say she's black or not. You can't defend her track record by saying she's doing her job and cleaning up black areas. Because everybody gets to run a campaign on that. Whether they're white, black, so-called black, whoever. They get to run campaigns where they can brag about how much they locking your motherfucking ass up and you give them a standing ovation. And then you turn around and talk about how unjust the system is. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. That's what makes us look like fucking jokes out here all the time. You cannot deal with the privatized prison complex targeting your people and talk about that and have an issue with that and then turn around and say Kamala's just doing her job. Everybody's just doing their job. The job just happens to be against you, and thus you should be against them. Period. We have to be honest about what's going on here. If you want to fucking vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris based on the fact that you think they're better than Donald Trump, then just say that. Say you don't give a fuck what they've done. You don't give a fuck if everything that they've done has been anti-black. You don't care about that. You just voting for them because they are a better option to you than Trump. Just say that. Don't be deep. Don't justify anti-black behavior, an anti-black system, an anti-black society. Don't justify that, and particularly if you are a black man or woman, because what you're justifying is somebody or an entire system being anti-you. And that makes you look fucking ridiculous, and I'm gonna call your motherfucking ass a sellout ass coon. That's what I'm gonna think about you if you can do this and make these grand statements and type up these long fucking stupid ass paragraphs that I'm seeing people type up in support of Kamala Harris doing her so-called job. Her being black don't matter because the job of the cave judge is to lock your motherfucking ass up too. To have you make up the majority of the prison population. That's everybody's job. Why are they never cleaning up the goddamn trailer parks, all them meth labs they got in that motherfucker? Ain't nobody ever running a campaign on cleaning up cave areas. Nobody does that. You get a standing ovation simply or only if you are locking up black people. That's it. That's all. That's when you get a standing ovation, and even black people will give a standing ovation for that. When there's something very problematic about that, knowing damn well these motherfuckers right now in the process of making billions off of selling marijuana, why are people being locked up for? That should be something that we keep on the forefront of the conversation, because that's very fucking problematic, very hypocritical of this system. They're making millions and billions of dollars for the same thing that black men and women have been locked up for. That's a problem. But Kamala's just doing her job. Say you support Kamala because you don't fuck with Trump. That could be what you say. That's dumb to me, but at least say that. Don't be siding with her actions or anti-black behaviors and you're a black person. Why the fuck are your areas the only ones that ever need to be cleaned up? We know damn well the white man and his mama are engaged in all types of crime. All types of heinous crime. But your areas are the only ones that ever need to be cleaned up. That should be a problem to you. But that's all the fuck I wanted to say. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this shit, because it's just mind-blowing to me to see black people, support their own oppression. That's crazy to me. I mean, I know that this system and white supremacy and institutional racism doesn't work without us. I make that point, and some black people get mad at me for making that point, but without our participation, enthusiastic participation, this system wouldn't work as efficiently as it does. So many of us find it logical that our areas are the ones that are the most policed, that our people are the ones that are most incarcerated. That doesn't make any sense. For you to be okay with that and know that there is a system that knows you're okay with that, and thus they continue. And when you start crying about the justice system, they look at you like you fucking crazy, because how you crying now when you was just in support of getting your area so-called cleaned up? You support that shit. But y'all like, share, subscribe. Links to follow me in the description box. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well. Black first, second, and third. And we know that regardless of the race of the politician or the AG or the cop or the judge, we know what their job is, and thus we don't support their motherfucking job. It doesn't make any sense to us for one to talk about cleaning up black communities when we're not dealing with the poverty, and the reason that black areas are in the state that they're in is due to poverty, and that conversation isn't one that gets to be had in full. We can't even talk about reparations in an effort to restore the black community. That's not something that this country even talks about. It's go lock all those poor black people up. That's all it is. And whole campaigns are ran and won Standing ovations given. When the person says that they're going to be tough on crime, they're talking about locking your people up, and you're supporting it. Shout out Team Rob. Y'all already know what the fuck it is. I'm out.